Good morning, Father in God. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Fine, thank you. Are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
The sun is shining. All is well.
Yeah, and Mr. Grasky's on holiday.
He is. I was just thinking this is the first time it's been just us since before Christmas.
Yes, it has. It has. It has. Yeah, obviously you two gelled well together last week and felt very strong and confident in your accusations and statements.
Well, you know, when the cat's away and all. I know I did try to defend the fact that you couldn't be my grandpa.
I wasn't going to mention it, but now you have. Thank you very much indeed. There we are. I think it's just the wisdom, the wiseness that comes with being a grandparent, yeah. Which one day you will hopefully happily.
I'm looking forward to it.
Enjoy.
Not too soon, I hope.
No. It's worth waiting for. Worth waiting for. Yeah. That would be good. Yeah, so there we are. So so that's all very good. A lot's gone on since last week. We've had some good services on Sunday. We had a very nice service for Prince Philip on Friday, which I think people appreciated.
They did, and you preached a storm, so it was great. Really good.
It was one of those things that you do.
No, it's good. Did you have some nice time off, or was it hijacked by the death of a member of the royal family?
It wasn't totally hijacked because I have the ability, as I'm sure you do as well, really, and we learn it that actually you can do what you want or not and leave it. So that wasn't too bad. I also had a very able deputy who stepped in and did all the hard work, putting together services and stuff like that. So apart from me pontificating and saying do this, do that, and do the other on a one-off occasion, I didn't have to do a great deal other than turn up with said sermon on the day. So that was okay. The biggest problem that I faced were the complaints.
Were these flag-related complaints?
These were flag-related complaints, yeah.
It's funny, I had one on Saturday as well. We were standing in the playing field and looking out across and you can see the tower, and they said, "Oh, I thought the flag would be flying for the funeral." I said, "Well, the flagpole is broken."
It is. Yeah, it is. Very sad occasion. The flagpole has been broken for a long time due to storm damage just before the first lockdown.
Okay.
And the bits that were needed to replace the broken bits, which were all the fastenings and the ropes and the whatever it was, were bought. But we didn't have anybody within the church who could fix it. And then we had the problem, of course, it's such a restricted area and space to work in. None of the companies could come because it meant working within 2 meters of each other. So by the time, of course, we could get people to work up there, there was such a backlog. And we couldn't find any company in Dorset that seemed willing to want to do it. And so we have a flagpole repair company coming all the way from Trowbridge in Wiltshire.
Gosh.
But they couldn't come before the 22nd of April because they were so busy.
There we are. Well, soon then the flag will be flying again over the tower.
It will on the 22nd. Mr. Beezer, good old Doug, who's one of our flag wardens, is already primed, doing exercises to run up and down the steps to get to the flagpole. Ready to put the flag up. But of course, we have to bear in mind that Wednesday, the 23rd, is the Queen's birthday.
Right. And St. George's Day.
Yeah, 25th is St. George's Day.
Oh, sorry, yes.
I know these things.
No, the other way round. The 23rd is St. George's Day and the 25th is the Queen's birthday.
I think the one comes before the other in my diary. It doesn't matter.
Oh, well, anyway.
The Queen's birthday requires the national flag, the whatever. St. George's Day requires the St. George's flag.
Oh, so it's very busy.
So Doug's going to be very busy running up and down the flag up the tower to change flags for that day. So there we are. So that's the history of the flag. And yes, so apart from the lots of complaints and rudeness and things that you get from time to time, all was well. And I had a good time off, and we did some We did some nice gardening, lots of hedge trimming with my new electric hedge trimmer. Anything that could be cut. You know, I even thought I'd do Jane's hair at one point. And the dog, I thought I'd trim the dog.
The pheasants.
Well,
still long enough.
They couldn't keep them still long enough, but anything that needed trimming was trimmed, and that was good. And we had a night ride out, but didn't stop anywhere because of the multitude of people that had gathered.
Yeah, it was a bit busy, wasn't it? Back to sort of some kind of normality.
So we didn't actually stop. We had a nice 1 or 2 ride rounds, which wasn't very good for the environment, I'm sure. If Mrs. Parrott's watching, Dr. Parrott's watching, she'll be telling me off for having a tootle around in my
carbon.
Yeah, too much carbon.
Good. I'm pleased that you had a nice time and a bit of a rest.
So we did. All was good. We're going to break with tradition, aren't we, today?
We are.
For the first time, we're not going to be tackling the gospel passage for Sunday. Which is
why have you made this executive decision? Which I do agree with.
Well, one, we spoke about the Good Shepherd this time last year. So if people want to hear it, they can go back, because you can pick up what will be number, whatever it'll be, 31 or 2 or 28 or whatever number this week last year. And also the Acts of the Apostles, which is what we're going to read, is compulsory reading. And I don't mean that in the sense that we say about it's compulsory, such a good book, which it is, but it's compulsory to read the Acts of the Apostles story throughout the Easter season.
It's true. Very true.
And it's also about mission, I think.
Yeah.
And we're going to hear in a few minutes, as you read it, all about the Kalos Gates, aren't we?
Very good. They're very good. So we're in... verses 5 to 12. So I'll read that, but we will give you a bit of context because we've jumped into a passage that you'll need to know what happened before. So this is from, Acts 4, 5 to 12. The Jewish rulers, elders and scribes assembled in Jerusalem with Annas the high priest, Caiaphas, John and Alexander, and all who were of the high priestly family. When they had made their prisoners stand in their midst, they inquired, "By what power or by what name did you do this?" Then Peter, filled with the Holy Spirit, said to them, "Rulers of the people and elders, if we are questioned today because of a good deed done to someone who was sick, and are asked how this man has been healed, let it be known to all of you and to all the people of Israel that this man is standing before you in good health by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom you crucified, whom God raised from the dead. This Jesus is the stone that was rejected by you, the builders. It has become the cornerstone. There is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given among mortals by which we must be saved." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, Book of Acts is like Luke part 2. So the Gospel of Luke and the Book of Acts are written, we believe, by the same person.
Scribed by the same person, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the Book of Acts starts basically with Pentecost, doesn't it? With the arrival of the Holy Spirit, and then it describes what the disciples were doing in those early weeks and months after Jesus had ascended and left them to it.
It's a bit like a Reader's Digest book, if you remember those of old, where you got kind of 2 or 3 books put together, isn't it?
It is.
So the first part of the Acts of the Apostles tells us all the stories about how Peter started to form the new way, the followers of the way, as they were known, the early Christian communities. And then he kind of goes on into what I see as the second part, where he starts to tell how Paul spread the gospel farther and wider before he started writing all his own letters to various churches that he'd set up. So you've got kind of two particular strands in one writing.
And it's and I've always understood the reason we have it as compulsory reading in the Easter season is because of the missional focus, because the great, what the resurrection is an activity that is about action and about being sent out to tell that truth. And all the gospel readings we're reading at the moment are very much focusing on, you are witnesses to this, so now you need to go and do something about it. You need to go and tell people. So the whole kind of feeling around the resurrection and the Great Commission at the end of Matthew and Ascension and Pentecost, the whole feeling is about being sent out to tell other people that Jesus is the Son of God and that he's risen again, that he is the rescuer, and that his way of living is God's kingdom now on earth. So the Acts of the Apostles is them living out that commission and that vocation.
Yeah, it's following up on a lot of the stories we hear in the Gospels. I mean, bearing in mind that Luke's Gospel, John's Gospel, certainly were coming towards the end of the first century, weren't they? So 60, 70 years after the events, things were being written down, and Luke is writing down what he's hearing Peter tell him, and later what Paul has been doing. And John at one point talks about Jesus being the way, the truth, the life, which is what Peter's starting to say. Who do we follow? We follow the way, the Jesus. And every time we meet, Jesus commands that we break bread and wine. We share in some kind of hospitality, as we would now start to talk about it in terms of church life. That, a lot of our more modern ways of trying to gather people together all hangs around hospitality.
It does.
And if you take that back to its farthest point, it's the Last Supper, isn't it? Whenever you meet, do this together, share together. And in this particular passage, as you read, Jesus has just healed a man. Peter has just healed somebody. And all the people in the temple aren't very happy because he took part in the temple. And they're not happy that this person's doing that. And the early Christians, or the early followers of Peter and others, used to still meet in the temple, because that's where people met. And we're getting to the crux, I think, where the temple authorities are getting fed up with them because they're taking their people away into this new way of understanding, and they're about to kick them out of meeting in the temples.
And there's this real pace of mission. I mean, when you read the early chapters of Acts, thousands of people are converted on hearing Peter preach. And all he preaches is basically saying, Jesus is the Son of God.
Yep.
You put him to death, we put him to death, depending on who he's talking to. And God raised him. And that's the proof that he is the Son of God. And he is the Messiah that we've been waiting for. And now we've got to get on with it. And there is this real energy around that conversion experience for some people. As we're told, how we know how accurate they are, we always, we don't know, do we? But, 5,000 people were added, another 5,000 people added a few next days later. That's quite that's more than the population of Beaminster coming to faith in one moment.
One moment. I mean, and that's the beauty of Paul, isn't it? When he writes, I think it's in the first letter of the Corinth to Corinth, the people in the community in Corinth, that he's already been at. You really hear about it. You read the Acts of the Apostles, you start to follow these things through. But he actually said at one point, and to those who are beginning to doubt, because there comes a point when this great colossal newness suddenly starts to fade, and it would in all things. And Paul is saying, if you don't believe, 500 people saw him at one go. And, there's still lots of them about. Go and ask them. They'll tell you they saw it. And that's the disadvantage we have today, of course. We can't say, go and speak to old Myrtle up the corner because she actually saw it. Because, of course, it's now from personal experience, isn't it, that we believe, that we've seen or heard. And I asked on Sunday during my my not so grand sermon following Friday, couldn't keep up the pace, you'll be pleased to know, that I actually said to people, when do you hear God talk to you today? Because that's what part of the readings are about on Sunday. How do we know God is here? How do we understand Him? And I picked on one or two people in the congregation who I know because they've spoken before to me about. And I said to Barbara, our lovely LLM and co-leader of the Messy Church, Barbara, you know for yourself that you've heard Jesus. And she told people, yes, I heard Jesus say this, which changed my life. And I said a similar thing to Judith, who has often shared with us that she has heard Jesus, particularly when she moved to this area, saying, Hook is the place for you to be, to do whatever. And I think it is how do we today still know? Because that's part of our mission, isn't it? To still talk about Jesus. And you said before we came on to our recording, I tell people every week about Jesus, and you do. You
said you're telling the wrong people.
Yeah, well, I sometimes think we are. It's back to the other passage, as I mentioned, when Jesus is sending the 72 pairs out and go out. But if you get to a house and they don't respond immediately, then shake the dust off, because it's so imperative you move on to the next group. You can come back to them, I guess, later if you need to. But if they don't want to receive the message or hear what you've got to say, move on quickly, because the job is too big and too exciting to hold on to.
And it's interesting, I was thinking about mission and about the work of the church and what is the point of the things we do in the Beaminster Team. And I think for me, it's always been about the presence of Christ, the teaching of Christ, the presence of Christ, the peace of Christ. And it all comes back to Jesus at the heart of everything. The only reason we do any of this stuff is about sharing Jesus, whether that's the love of Christ or the action of Christ or the compassion of Christ and healing of Christ. The whole point is it comes back to Jesus. And that's the same for Peter and John in this reading. They're saying you can be annoyed with us, you can arrest us, you can persecute us, and that's just fine, because the heart of the matter is not us, but it's Jesus. It's Jesus risen. It's the power of Jesus to heal. It's the power of Jesus working in the world now. And when I hear, that was going to sound ridiculous, I know, but, I was listening to the news this morning, and there's lots of het up people about this Super Football League, and there's lots of other challenges going on in our world. And I always think when I hear the news, if you put Jesus in the middle of that meeting or that press conference or that discussion, what would Jesus be offering to that situation?
He'd be signing up to become the third Jesus to play for Manchester City this season, wouldn't he?
Very good. But I think Jesus would say, stop being greedy.
Yeah, of course he would. Of course he would.
And, when we walk into the context when we're talking about, I don't know, feeding the hungry, Jesus would walk in and say, food banks are not the answer. Could we not live in a society where we're better at making sure everyone's included and sharing?
Which has always been my point about food banks, hasn't it?
No. But there's so many things that I just think if you put Jesus in the heart of it, then we have a different view. And the same when we're talking about when we're in conversation with each other and it gets difficult and people are mean and unkind and shout at you about flags and things, you think, hang on, if you put Jesus in this context, couldn't we behave a little bit better? Because that's what Jesus would do.
Yeah, and that, one of the things I've been asked many times in roundabout ways, and perhaps I paraphrase it into one thing that they're really saying is, I've often been asked, what is the point of the church? Which means, what's the point of me? Well, many people have asked that many times, so that's okay. I can answer that quite happily. And of course, the point of the church isn't just about gathering people together. It is about coming together once a week on the Sabbath which always was a special day and kept special. But it's about coming together to pray together, because it's good to pray together with a larger group of people and to do what Jesus told us to do, to break bread together. But the role of the purpose for me of the Christian church and my role is to keep putting Jesus or God at the forefront of what life's about. What is the purpose of the church? The purpose of the church is to make a better life for people to be able to live and share together, which is what you were saying about food banks or whatever.
The point is that every bit of life can be transformed by the presence of Jesus.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I know annoys school governors' meetings when I go, not that it takes me much to annoy school governors, I'm sure, but one of the things I know annoys them from time to time is when they'll be ranting on about something and they'll say, well, you're keeping very quiet, David, as if that's unusual. But I will say, well, the only reason really I'm here, because I'm appointed by the Diocese to sit at this church school governing body, the only reason that I'm here is to ask a very simple question. And they look and I say, the question is, where is God in all that we're talking about? And of course, they don't want to hear that, because God shouldn't be talked about, should he, in schools or in, whatever. I believe that passionately that if God should be talked about, not because we want to beat people or with our leather-clad Bible. I've only got a plastic-clad Bible, but with our leather-clad Bible, but because we genuinely feel. In my heart, I genuinely feel, I know you have the same passion as do others, we genuinely feel that the message of Jesus Christ brings such great hope into a troubled world and brings about a whole new opportunity for people to live in a different way, in relationship with each other, in relationship with God. To have God in the centre of our lives makes such a difference. Makes me a different person to the grumpy person you obviously felt I was last week in the discussions with Mr. Grass. So, God at the centre of all that we do makes us a different person. And that's what that statement's starting to talk about. What did he say at the very end? You were reading, he said something about Jesus, doesn't he?
There is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given among mortals by which we must be saved.
Yeah. And the man, the man standing before you in good health is there because of the name of Jesus. Yeah. Jesus changed his life, absolutely. Make him well. And we have to understand that doesn't automatically mean that everyone can be perfectly healed, but we can, in death, you can have good death because you're at peace with yourself, with other people, because, God has brought you to that moment. I've said this to many people. It's not about being physically healed or, people will say to us, don't they, if Jesus hadn't, if you believe in God, he wouldn't let this person die. But actually, there's nothing wrong with dying. We're all going to die, as Prince Philip found out. But what it does mean is that through God you've got this new hope and it can be good.
Thank you. We need to go because we've got other people waiting. I don't know if when we're recording you'll be able to see that other people are waiting now. I don't know. We'll wait and see. But it's been lovely to see you, David. Thank you for being here. And you can follow everything we're doing on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Beaminster Team. Check out everything we're doing as a team's on our website, beaminsterteamchurches.org. And we'll welcome Chris back, I guess. I don't know, we haven't talked. Are we going to be forever a Trinity?
Well, I think if Chris wants to come, we ought to invite him. He was talking to me about starting a breakaway group with somebody else if we didn't want him. Now, I think we've got to keep hold of him, really.
We'll wait and see. David, it's lovely to see you. Take care. See you all very soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.